My wife and I never agree what to watch, and we love each other enough to be married and live in the same home. And so people have very different tastes and different moods, and you have to have something for all those moods.
Netflix spends more on content than the defense budget of Sweden. And the truth is, it's actually more.
You're correct.
Ted, it is so wonderful to see you again.
You too, in person.
In person. It's been too long. And oh my God, what a year it's been for you.
It has been a busy year, yes.
It's been a busy
And it's only
year.
February, by the way.
It is, exactly. But even the last 12 months at Netflix, so much has happened. I mean, on January 19th, Reed Hastings, after 2 decades, stepped down and handed over the reins formally to you and co-CEO Greg Peters. 2022 was really difficult in terms of, at one point you had a loss of subscribers, the stock prices plummet, and then in December, 7.5 million subscribers are added, which is actually beyond the analyst forecasts.
Yeah.
It's been a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, the first half of the year was pretty rough last year. Got off to a slow start. The recovery from COVID and all these things made things quite uncertain. Remember, we shut down our operation in Russia where we had 1 million subscribers drop. So there was a whole lot of things we were navigating the first part of the year. And then the second half of the year really got moving. And I think it really speaks to the company that Reed built, which was filled with people who are incredibly smart and resilient. And we really got singularly focused on reigniting growth. Programming, starting probably with Stranger Things Season 4, and then rolling into a big global phenomenon like Wednesday, and back-to-back hits from all of our content around the world. It's just been, the wind was at our back for sure.
What's your top priority right now?
The streaming business in the last 6 months. People are openly questioning whether or not this is a good business. Well, of course it's a great business because this is what consumers want. The world is moving to streaming and on demand, and away from linear television, away from paid television, and away from transactional movies. And the people who do this well, which we've been solely focused on for 25 years as a company, are going to be very critical in this space. And in terms of being profitable, look at what is success streaming. I really think there are 3 business metrics, only 3. The business can be portrayed very complex or very simple. I think it's quite simple. Number 1 is engagement. Do people watch? How much do they watch? Where do they watch? And when it comes to engagement, we're clearly leading that around the world. Netflix is company is profitable globally in our streaming endeavors, which our major competitors are not. So if you look at sub counts and all those kind of things, those are sub metrics. The real metrics of the business are engagement, revenue, and profit.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that, but before I have to ask you, so speaking of the streaming and non-profit and profit, I just read a piece in Time magazine, which said the streaming wars are now in their chaos era. Okay, and it said that any platform that's not named Netflix is losing money. Disney is laying off thousands of people. And one of the lines in the piece was that the content arms race kicked off by Netflix hasn't paid off. What's your take? Give us a sense of what's happening. What are these streaming wars?
Well, it depends on who paid it off for. Yes, we did definitely ignite what I think is the largest explosion of original production, maybe in the history of the medium. In the new generation of entertainers, people have very diverse taste, and they expect to get what they want, and you don't always feel like the same thing. I always joke about that. My wife and I never agree what to watch, and we love each other enough to be married and live in the same home. And so people have very different tastes and different moods, and you have to have something for all those moods. So we started investing in a lot of breadth of content early on, and so for our early investment has paid off. And for us, what they talk about being the only company that isn't called Netflix, they're all losing money. We never took our P&L to zero to grow this business. We grew it soundly by really focusing on consumers and consumer first. And we didn't, so I think as long as you're in the happy consumer business, you can grow infinitely as long as you keep those members happy.
Ted, you talked about breadth of content, but when House of Cards first premiered in 2013, you had said that we want to become HBO before HBO can become us. But more recently, you've said that Netflix is going to be part HBO, part FX, part Comedy Central, part the Food Network. Is this a change of tack?
No, it's an expansion of it. So yes, we still do that type of programming that we talked about back in the House of Cards days, which, believe it or not, is 10 years ago this month. We launched House of Cards. We only were doing a handful of kind of prestige dramas in the early days. And today we produce across every genre of television programming, every version of movies, every genre of movies. So when you say that when I said that about HBO, I was trying to get into the shorthand, which is I think that they were at the time the kind of North Star of high quality programming. And we had not yet made anything. So I said, when we get into this, I want to be that great at making the programming, much like India. What is it? I'm going to say it right, Tommy, right?
Thali.
Yes, Thali, sorry.
Right.
Where it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And because I think that is what people want, right? I think sometimes you want a drama, sometimes you want a comedy, or sometimes with this incredible history and rich history of Indian cinema, sometimes you want it all in the same movie. And we want to be able to provide that. So
is it like Bella said, we want to replace all television?
Well, we want to be your choice. We want to make your favorite show your favorite film. And there's tremendous value in being very good at figuring out consumer taste and helping them navigate through the world of enormous choices.
Ted, let's talk about Netflix India. I know that India has always been a priority market for Netflix.
Yes.
But the general perception seems to be that it's been a bit of a hit and miss for the service here. And I've asked you about this before, and you had said that, look, this is a trial and error phase. To match audiences with stories is very difficult.
Yeah.
It's very fluid, and we're committed to getting better and better.
Yep.
Now, in January, Netflix India had Trial by Fire, which is a superb piece of storytelling. Do you think the team is already better and better?
I think they're better every day. And I do think you say it's hit and miss. I think when you enter into a new market, sometimes it's miss, hit. And I think that's, and what I figured out early on when we started launching in various countries is you didn't learn much in one country that was helpful in the next country. You have to be there. You have to be on the ground, and you have to understand consumer taste. You have to understand the culture. You have to understand the industry. You have to understand creators in that country. What are the challenges to getting movies made and series made? And in the case of India, remember, I think India's got this beautiful, rich cinema culture, and not that much around television at that time when we first got here. So Sacred Games was our kind of early attempt to say, well, what if you took the principles of cinema and infused them into television? And the Indian audiences loved that. And that was our first show out of the gate. And now you look going forward, we've now produced 100 original projects in India. Last year alone, 28. And then to what you were saying earlier, just we're only in February and we've already released Trial by Fire.
The Romantics.
The Romantics. I was just going to talk about this great documentary we just did, in Class. The slate of films and series that we have coming up for the next year are stronger than we've ever had. So this idea of really getting into the rhythm and the groove of local taste and local desire, I think we're better at that than we ever were. Our team who runs India run it from India. A lot of, I think, companies who try to run India out of California get frustrated early on because they just don't learn anything. And here our team really does understand the local culture and the local storytellers, and they themselves are part of the local audience.
And of course, last year, the big success stories were Gangubai and RRR for Netflix.
Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, honestly, Ted, I've never seen that much euphoria around an Indian film like there was for RRR.
Being in Los Angeles during award season, this year, RRR and Gangubai were in the discussion deeply. Everyone was talking about this movie. There are 180 movies to watch on the voting site, and two that got watched a lot were these two movies. And then they get found out because they saw them on Netflix. So those movies kind of get pushed into the culture on Netflix, and then people start talking about, hey, did you see this movie? Did you see this movie? And RRR, for many people who I know, may have been the first Indian movie they ever saw. And for them, it was such a wild journey that they want more. They're going to want more. The way that Squid Game did that for Korean content around the world, again, on Netflix. So it's not that it's impossible to have a global hit. It's very rare. And you need to have a distribution platform like Netflix, and you need to have a system of choosing like Netflix to help surface things that you may not know you're going to like, but we do. Elephant Whisperer, which is actually nominated for the Academy Award.
Absolutely. That's on Netflix
for
too.
short documentary, and it's our second nomination for short documentary, both films from India. Period, End of Sentence, which won the Oscar a few years ago, and then Elephant Whispers, which is nominated this year.
How wonderful. How wonderful. What, practically speaking, what's the way to consistently have local content break out globally?
Make it work locally. There's no, you cannot reverse engineer a global show. The things that work globally are the things that are the most authentic local. Squid Game from Korea was every bit Korean television and a hybrid of Korean television and Korean cinema. And it worked first and foremost in Korea and then blew up around the world. And I think that's true of all of our shows that have worked globally, is that they first and foremost were loved by the local audience.
Ted, one of the most mysterious things about the streaming world is, of course, numbers, right? Because so little is revealed. So, there are all these subscription numbers that do the rounds, and if you look at those, then yes, Netflix is lagging. But if you look at third-party apps, if you look at App Annie or ComScore numbers, in fact, Netflix leads because, like you were saying, engagement is so high. It's 74% for Netflix, whereas the rest of the platforms are declining. So I know you already addressed this in a little bit, but is that then your measure of success? And how does Netflix India rack up?
It's absolutely the measure of success. It has to start with engagement. Do people care enough to spend their viewing time with you? Are they spending their screen time with Netflix? And so that's why that engagement metric is so fine.
Traditional wisdom in India is that you can't really build a mass platform without sport. Now, you've said that Netflix is not anti-sport, it's pro-profit, yes. Right?
Yes.
And you're confident that you'll take this to twice its size without sport. But, here it's like, if you don't have cricket, you can't do it. So what's your response?
Well, we've built, it has been true historically that sports were very important for pay television, for broadcast television. And I think for the most part, it was a very large lost leader. So the big question was, can you build a big audience or a big business without a lost leader of sports? And for us, we have proven that we can, and we have. And so I do think that we can, and I do think the way people engage in sports isn't all just about watching the game itself. Look at the impact that we've had on Formula One around the world with our show Drive to Survive, in which we just launched new shows that take place in the world of professional tennis, in the world of professional golf. You saw The Last Dance and the impact that it had on both on Michael Jordan and on the NBA around the world. We saw bigger numbers, viewing numbers on Netflix internationally than ESPN saw domestically on Last Dance.
So tech guru Scott Galloway said that Netflix spends more on content than the defense budget of Sweden. And the truth is, it's actually more. You spend more than the defense budget of Sweden. It's at $17 billion a year.
I was going to say, I don't know the defense budget of Sweden, but I know our content budget, and it is that. You're correct.
So how much of this, Ted, is for Netflix India? And what is the brief in terms of content? Because as you give cheaper options, as you have an ad-supported tier, you're going to have to sort of make the content more mass rather than premium. So what's the brief?
The first people who signed up for Netflix were probably very Western-centric in their taste, early adopters to technology, had wired broadband at home and a big screen TV and all of that. And as you get more and more mass, you get more and more mix of folks, so you needed a mix of price points. So over the years, we've added multiple price points, including we're rolling out, an ad tier around the world. And the programming too then begins a little more in the mainstream. You don't abandon the other program, it's additive. This is all additive. And then as people move up and down in the way that they look at their programming and the taste, sometimes you find yourself watching something that you've never seen before or thought you would like, and you love it. We have an unscripted show from Korea right now called Physical 100 that people are watching all over the world. And this is, again, we've only been making original content in Korea for a few years and working across all forms of storytelling. The way that Indian Matchmaker is a very big hit in the United States, that you can make all those content work. So when I tell you that we're growing engagement and revenue in India, then the next part of that is that India gets a little bit bigger piece of the content budget. And so you basically are trying to constantly get just ahead of or just behind the growth in a market and figure out what's working and keep investing.
Would this sort of content brief be, again, be all things to all people?
Yeah, definitely. So we want to invest broadly in things that people love, and again, in the things that you may be in the mood for. So that could be, a very soapy drama, or it could be, a big action film, or more of a prestige drama.
Ted, last year when the 1.2 million subscriber loss was reported and the stock price fell, there was, and this was actually reported in many sort of platforms and newspapers, there was sort of almost audible glee in Hollywood, right? To see a giant tumble, also because you upended every rule that was and that existed till then. At that point, Ted, did you have a sort of a dark night of the soul? Were you afraid, and how did you get past it?
Like I was saying earlier, the company was really built to be resilient. So, and I try to have great perspective. So people say a lot of very nice things about Netflix. Don't take them too seriously, because when they say mean things about Netflix, you don't take them too seriously either. And I wouldn't say that we really stumbled as much as we tripped. And I do think so. It's a matter of gathering your things and getting back to work. And we've done it from the beginning. When we started Netflix, when we were just mailing DVDs around the United States, we were at it, we were leading the market, and then Walmart, the world's biggest retailer, and Blockbuster, at that time, the world's largest entertainment company, both came at our business and undercut our price dramatically and tried to run at us. And we sunk a little bit, and we came back. And we came back by making a better product and keeping our members and our customers first and foremost. Didn't worry about the competition very much. And then when we launched into our streaming business, we had a little bouncy middle there. We were trying to figure out between DVD and streaming which was going to be our future and which date you'd want to pull the plug on one or the other. And we did this thing called Quickster that the members hated everywhere. And a bunch of people quit, and and our stock went down then. Actually, our stock dropped much more dramatically than it did recently, and came back within about 18 months. So we've been through, success stories are very rarely straight up and to the right. We did break a lot of rules when we got into the business, but I'll let you in on a secret. It's not because we were trying to be rebels. We didn't know the rules. So it helped us a lot.
So you don't panic ever, Ted?
Panic?
Yeah. Do you ever get scared?
No, I mean, you will always want to be a little scared. You always want a little, very healthy level of nervousness, but not panic. I think here's what I take a lot of confidence in. We have been in this business for 25 years. We have one business. This is all we do, so we have to be great at it. Streaming is the future. People are going to increasingly move away from linear television, away from transactional movies, towards streaming. In fact, in the US, where we're very penetrated and streaming is quite mature, streaming grew 46% in December. And by next year, it's forecast to surpass both cable and broadcast to be the dominant way people watch television in the United States. And I believe that's going to be true around the world.
I read an article, Ted, in the New York Times, in which Barry Diller said this about you, and I quote exactly. He's had more singular influence on movies and television shows than anyone ever had. He has denuded the power of the old movie companies that had held for almost 100 years. They're now irrelevant to setting the play and rules of the day. If there is still a Hollywood, he is it. Are you Hollywood, Ted?
That would be news to my wife and kids. Look, I think that the version of Hollywood that Barry talks about, Barry's very generous, by the way, when he says that. I think the reason why it's possible that I've had that kind of influence is because Netflix has had that kind of influence, and that streaming is such a popular way of consuming. So in that way, very few places and few companies have done movies and television together in the same place under the same scale, at the scale that we do, and in as many countries as we do, and as many languages as we do. And it really has changed the way people watch. This is, I think, a way to kind of make content, make movies and shows anywhere in the world, and if you make them good enough, they'll be watched all over the world. That's never been done before, and I just happen to be the guy who's, overseeing a lot of very smart people doing it.
What are you proudest of, Ted, of what Netflix India has achieved, and what do you want to see happen in the next 2 years?
Proudest of Netflix India has been that ability to just keep going. Yes, we started off pretty slow. We were trying to had a lot to figure out, but just the ability to keep going and making great programming. If you want to see, we just released this. You mentioned the Romantics. For me, I want to make this mandatory viewing in the company, where I want every one of our employees, all 10,000 people, to watch all episodes of this documentary to learn about this incredible, rich history of cinema in India. The storytelling is great. It tells you so much about the culture here, and the business culture, and the storytelling culture. I learned more in that 4 hours than I have learned in the last 20 years trying to figure out India for movies and television shows. And I'm super proud of the fact that we're in the discussion. And I think even this year, like I said, with Oscar nominees from India, and are being able to drive audiences to films that they've never seen before from new places in the world, it's a lot to be proud of.
Yeah. I'm going to end, Ted, with a few questions from the Proust questionnaire. What is your idea of perfect happiness?
Perfect happiness. Oh, in life or?
In life.
I have figured out that there is no life-work balance. So do something you love, and I do that. I get to do the thing I love.
Which living person do you most admire?
It's very. That's a long list. It's very hard not to look at the resilience of not just President Zelensky, but the people of the Ukraine, and what they've been through, and the strong resilience of those people. It's amazing.
On what occasion do you lie, Ted?
Oh, hardly ever. The problem is I can't remember things very well. So if you lie, you have to have a very good memory to lie. So.
Last one, what is your motto?
My motto is this is a business motto. I ask the teams all the time, is the juice worth the squeeze? So is this going to be so big that you'd be willing to put up with almost anything to make it work? So when someone wants to do something that's really hard or really controversial or really difficult, I say, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Nice. Ted, thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.